Well, thank you very much, Mary. We're very happy to be here tonight discussing hoodoo, and we hope our talk will help your listeners and help bless them in some way. But before we start, we just wanted to explain our names a little. Doctor is a title, one among many used in hoodoo, that people give to hoodoo practitioners. We are not medical doctors. We give no medical advice. We make no claims of healing or curing any conditions or ailments. Again, we are not medical doctors.
Hell, I haven't even finished high school.
Well, hey, I have.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. This is Dr. Thunder.
Now that you've just gained all of our confidences, we can't wait to hear what else you have to tell us.
Okay, yes, there's a lot of titles that are given with hoodoo. There's people who name themselves doctor with animal names, or in my case, natural phenomenon, Dr. Thunder. There's been Dr. Bug, Dr. Buzzard. Also, more familiar names like Papa, like there's a Papa Jim down in Texas, Mama, Professor, Sister, Brother, things like that. And that's common. And
so are you saying you're both common?
No, the titling is common.
Very good.
And also I'd like to remind people, or, well, not remind them, but tell them for the first time to get a pencil and paper handy, because we'll be giving some examples of things you might be able to do to help yourself with hoodoo later on in the program.
Very good.
Dr. Thunder, can you believe that there are some people who still don't know what hoodoo is?
I know. You mentioned hoodoo, there's two things people think about. First, you've just mispronounced hoodoo, or two, there's a lot of sticking of pins in dolls. But those folks are only half right. And we'll get to dolls and needles later. Hoodoo is something that's come to this country through African slaves brought into this country, brought portions of their religion. It's a survival. It's not a religion per se, but it's a body of folk magic. Religions like voodoo and Santeria and Palo all require training and initiation. In hoodoo, practitioners are considered to be gifted for the work. And it's truly a magical tradition that goes back in this country hundreds of years.
I like to think of hoodoo as the folk magic of this continent.
I'd say that's exactly correct. That and Native American magic, which the population which practices hoodoo is primarily African American, and surprising to some, it's 80% Christian. A lot of people consider the Bible to be the most important conjure book there is, and it divides itself. There's Protestant variations, and there's also a lot of Catholic material that's gone into it. That manifests a lot through recitation of the Psalms, praying to saints. He references to Catholic candle burning for the saints and for the best wishes of the dead.
Are you talking about candle magic?
Yes.
Very good.
As a matter of fact, the common use these days of glass-cased candle magic comes straight from Catholicism.
And the holy water.
Yes.
And incense burning.
Yes, indeed.
And blessing yourself as you come in the building.
Yes.
And hoodoo, too, is a real practical, pragmatic method. It's meant to help people in their everyday lives with love and money, health, peace, things that you need.
Things that you go to church for and pray for?
Well, not necessarily. It's needs-based. There's a lot of magical systems out there where people say that is purely for spiritual development, things like ceremonial magic. A lot of times they're never doing any magic for themselves or others. They are trying to elevate themselves and the plane of existence that they're on to a higher level. Hoodoo, on the other hand, is if you're having problems with your boss, there's things you can do. If you're having problems with your neighbor, there's things for that too. And if you need love drawn into your life, there's solutions for that. If you're short on cash, There's ways to draw in money, and as a matter of fact, in Hoodoo, there's a lot of gambling magic amongst the African-American peoples. Gambling was never seen as a bad or evil thing like a lot of Caucasian Protestant religions may have viewed it, so that's a survival that exists today.
Very good.
Well, I think, were we going to do a little bit more history, Dr. Thunder?
Well, I think we could do that. Shall I go on with that?
Go on with History 101 for Hoodoo.
Okay, well, of course, we brought African slaves into our country, and Hoodoo magical practice derives mostly from survivals from the Congo region of Africa, which is a little surprising because it's not on the western coast of Africa where a lot of slaves were taken from, and I'm not exactly sure of all the details of why that is. And what happened is their magical practice was based heavily into botany and the herbal magic of their homeland. Now, the people have come over to our new country, and now they have no plant lore. Everything's not the same. They can't find the things they used to work with before, and so intermingling through Native Americans, they learned the botany of this country and applied that. Hoodoo's got a very specific plant lore. It often does not agree with European magical styles, although it does relate to the doctrine of signatures, which means if a part of the plant looks like something, maybe it's good for that. An example would be violets. The leaves are shaped like hearts, and so it's good for love magic, and that applies in Hoodoo. That also applies in the European doctrine of signatures. And the most important part of the plant is the root, in most cases. There are cases where just the leaves or other parts of the plant are used, but that's not always the case. Usually it's the root that is considered to have the most power. Then the people, after the days of slavery ended, there was a migration of the African American to the cities. This created a problem because you no longer have places to wild harvest the herbs and roots that you require for your magical practice. But in doing so, the move to the city, they discovered the pharmacies, which at that time were selling medicinal packaged herbs. And what happened at the turn of the century is that simultaneously several, usually Jewish pharmacists, discovered that they had an alternate customer profile. And so they started repackaging some of the herbs, not as medicinal herbs, but as magical herbs.
I think there was one famous drugstore in New Orleans called the Cracker Jack.
Yes. And this is interesting because then they also started combining herbs using the Hoodoo recipes, because a lot of times it's not just a single herb that you're using, but it's a multitude of herbs together to create, say, a cleansing bath, a spiritually cleansing bath. And so these formulas also started to appear. And what was very interesting about that was that because a lot of these Jewish pharmacists already were familiar with magical texts from their own culture, a lot of Jewish magic started to be incorporated into Hoodoo. Things like the 6th and 7th Book of Moses, the Key of Solomon the King, things like that. The packaging that had Jewish Mogan Davids on it became considered powerful objects.
But they didn't quite use it the same way that the ceremonial magicians used some of these books, like the Key of Solomon. The ceremonial magicians from Europe would go through this long ceremony and all that stuff with different magical tools, but the Hoodoo practitioners would basically take like the seals and sigils from these grimoires and use those. They might stick them in the Bible to bless them, and something like that, or write a request on them.
That's right. A lot of the mojo bags, and incidentally, mojo has nothing to do with genitalia. It's a small, usually red flannel bag, which is filled with herbs and maybe mineral or even animal curios for things like drawing money or drawing love or personal mastery over others, or maybe even to develop psychic abilities. A lot of these, up until the 70s, and even today, if you ordered them, would have inside different Solomonic seals to empower the rest of the mojo bags.
So we don't really know if Austin Powers really had a mojo or not. Right? He was talking about something completely different.
That's completely different. And
no mojo working.
Yes, Mr. Mojo rising. So this also, at this time, because they were looking for other magical books, these new magical companies that had grown out of the Jewish pharmacies were looking for other books that were free of copyright, and that brought into Hoodoo different texts. Like there's one that comes from another American folk tradition, which is called powwow magic, and there's a book called Powwows, or the Long Lost Friend, and it's a book of charms that can be spoken. It mentions psalms a lot, and so at this point, also some of the European magical trends are brought into Hoodoo, but it's never high ceremonial magic. It's always basically a folk style of magic.
Now, is that more casual?
Yes. Ceremonial magic's very involved, a lot of candles, very precise spell work. In Hoodoo, usually you just speak from the heart when you make your prayers or ask for whatever work you're having done to be done, and it always comes from the heart. Usually with, if you've ever heard the black ministers, they have a sort of cadence to their voice, and they really start to roll with it. That's the kind of cadence that a lot of Hoodoo practitioners use when they're doing spell work.
I would think of it as the European ceremonial magicians, or, they have to do their spell perfectly and in rhyme or something like that, or they, repeat the words perfectly. But in Hoodoo, it's more like a shamanistic thing. The words just kind of come out of you, what's necessary and what's best for that time.
Right. And so I would say that pretty much brings things up to the 20th century as to where things came. After that, actually some very large concerns for magical supplies for Hoodoo developed, but we needn't go into that right now. I think maybe we should go into some of the terminology, because it has a whole different way of speaking about things that wouldn't be familiar to someone, even someone who is in a magical tradition now. For instance, there's the words crossed or crossed conditions. If you're under crossed conditions, that means nothing's going right for you. Or maybe someone's performed a spell on you to give you bad luck or to cause bad things to happen. Anyhow, nothing good is happening. You're under crossed conditions. There's ways to take that off. There's if you're doing something to a person, you might be said to be laying tricks, doing a job, throwing powders, laying for somebody. There's terms like gooferd, which comes from a Congo word, kufa, which means to kill. There's a item called goofer dust, which is filled with nasty things, which you sprinkle at a person's door, walking backwards and cursing at the same time. And then there's mojos, hands, and jackballs. And those are basically the same thing. Jackballs actually are shaped like balls. They have an herbal core to them that is covered with usually red yarn, and a piece of string is extended from it, so it can sometimes be used as a pendulum. Hands and mojos are the same thing. Sometimes they're called mojo hands. And a part of that history, why it's called hands, is sometimes, in the old days, maybe an actual piece of finger bone would be added to them to give more power working through a spirit. Excuse me.
And if you had cross conditions, so then they're developed uncrossing, which is using different ways of removing negativity from people, uncrossing oils, uncrossing rituals, blessing a candle with uncrossing oil and helping a person with that.
Yeah.
There's uncrossing baths and floor washes and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, the ritual baths for uncrossing are very interesting. You usually, in the old days, it was done in a wash tub because that's what people had, and you do it between two white candles, which may or may not have been dressed with an oil, a spiritual oil, maybe a blessing oil or an uncrossing oil. And then after the completion of your bath, you would have to take the wash tub outside and throw the water to the east at the rising sun. There's other ways of uncrossing, but the baths are still popular. Sometimes these days people just collect a little bit of the bath water and go out and throw it to the east or take it to a crossroads to send it on its way to all the directions. Take away the bad luck.
What would they add into the bath?
If you were blessing yourself to take off cross conditions, you might use something like hyssop, and then do the psalm where the Lord cleanses me with hyssop. Otherwise, there's other uncrossing herbs. There's things like eucalyptus is very good for casting off things like that. There's other herbs too. There's one company called the Lucky Mojo Curio Company, which sells a 13 herb bath for crossed conditions. So there's an entire realm of different things in there.
I think lemongrass is one of the ingredients that's very good for bringing spiritual relief, blessings, and uncrossing conditions too.
Well, I've heard of salt baths, where you take a sea salt bath.
Well, there's some of that. Some of that's European. Also, I know Dr. Fox enjoys a good beer bath once in a while.
Oh yeah, that gets rid of all the negativity. Put a couple of cans of beer in there.
But these are actually more European forms of an uncrossing ritual.
Okay.
But still accepted within Hoodoo. There's a fellow named Draja Mikaharik who's written a couple books. One of them is called Spiritual Cleansing, and he includes those things. Also, he has an egg cleansing, like you find down south of the border amongst the Hispanic populations. You might have seen that in films.
What does that involve?
You take a fresh raw egg, and it's rubbed over areas of a person's body. Sometimes it's actually rubbed, sometimes it's held above the skin, and incantations or psalms can be said to relieve the condition. And then, as a sign to how well this is working, sometimes it's broken in a bowl to see if there's a sign like a blood spot or if a part of it's turning black or whatever. Sometimes the entire egg is just thrown into the toilet and smashed and flushed away.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is in the Pennsylvania Dutch powwow hexcraft traditions, they use the egg sometimes too to remove charms or something that's been placed upon someone or bad luck, and to cleanse, and then they throw it into the stove or the fireplace. Yeah, it's the same thing. The fireplace being a big exit point to the home. I think that if a lot of listeners may be not familiar with the concepts of magic, and there's certain things that go across the board in most magical traditions, and magic is basically the ability to transform reality, and a lot of folk magic is giving power back to the people.
That's right.
If, medieval times, you may have had your lord in the manor who was not treating the peasants too well. Well, they had their magic to try to deal with that. And the slaves brought from Africa, they developed their magic to try to get their masters to treat them better. So, and two of the laws that go across the board in most magic, there's a law, it's given different names, law of similarity or association, which is kind of that effects resemble causes, that if you do something that resembles something else, it's going to affect that other thing. What looks alike is alike. Like if you're a magnet attracts, so if you use a magnet with some coins around it and anoint it with money oil, you're going to attract wealth because it's going to attract the same way that it does the steel.
And lodestones.
Lodestones, right, in Hoodoo.
They're magnetic rocks. You place them in the spell. You anoint them with oil. You might place your money underneath a lodestone to draw more money to it.
And the other main law is the law of contagion. And most of when you read these old European kind of folklore pieces or history even, they talk about someone got a hold of someone's nail clippings or hair or something, and they were using it to contact that person and perform some magic. This is the law of contagion, that something that's once in contact with something is always in contact with it. So if you have a piece of something or someone, you can affect that person.
A lock of hair, fingernail clippings, things like that.
Well, isn't that how some of the psychics help out solving some of the cases of missing people? They're holding something that person had worn or owned?
Oh, sure. That's term psychometry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's not really a big part of Hoodoo so much.
Okay. Oh, it isn't. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of like reading that. That would be reading the person and their life, whereas Hoodoo would use it to influence the other way.
The aspects of divination in Hoodoo is very interesting because it doesn't. You generally don't go to a conjure doctor, root worker, and go to ask for a full-blown reading you do in European magic, American style, psychics, whatever. When you go to them, you say, oh, I'm having a hard time, things are happening, or this gal's caused me problems or something. Generally do a shorter style of reading, which is generally just considering the ways to proceed with the magical treatment and whether or not the client is correct in where they're coming from.
I think the term is conditions, right? Doktors Thunder, they want to find out what the conditions are, and then you use the...
In Hoodoo, we have condition oils, so you have different things that you're taking care of conditions. There's one oil out there that's called thrifty oil. You'd think, well, that's going to help me save money, but no, that's if someone's being too thrifty. You want to make them spend more money. You're taking care of that thrifty condition. And you want them to spend that money on you, of course. There's other examples, too, but...
the attraction oil.
Attraction, right.
Different forms of compelling oil, or there's a really... this one has a kind of a crazy name, Essence of Bend Over oil, which is... it's to get someone to deal with you in a better way, to make them see your point of view.
When you think of bend over, they're talking about a term of someone bending over in supplication to you, as opposed to whatever other images come to your mind. So with Essence of Bend Over, you might add that to the wash water if you're a servant, wash the floors in your employer's house, and then if they're getting a new car, they say, hey, you shouldn't be riding the bus. Maybe you should just take my old car, or hey, I'm cleaning out the closet. Instead of saying it to the Goodwill, maybe your husband would like these suits. Things like that. It's kind of a sneaky domination kind of oil without being cruel about it, I guess.
So, do you guys know how to concoct these things? What would go into something like that?
Well, a domination oil, and there's many recipes for these. Sometimes you have several oils that are the same name that can have wildly different recipes, but you would use, in a basic domination kind of thing, including Essence of Bend Over, would probably be the primary ingredients of calamus and licorice would be the two that you'd almost have to have. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Fox?
Well, that sounds right to me. And the funny thing is that there's a lot of cheap products out there that are just like colored oil with a little bit of perfume in them. But authentic Hoodoo practitioners would always try to use.
They'd either make their own,
or find something that's authentic where there's actual roots and pieces of plant material in it. You've got the right oils, whether it's cinnamon or whatever. You get the right blend.
Right, and there's not a lot of people doing that anymore. One of them is the Lucky Mojo Curio Company I mentioned earlier, and they can be found at luckymojo.com if anyone's interested. We may give that again later. And a big part of hoodoo that's really kind of interesting to me is foot track magic. How about you, Dr. Fox?
Well, it's something that's specific to hoodoo. You don't find this in much of the European, although in a few minutes I'll tell you about one place I found it. But go ahead, Dr.
Okay. There's a part of hoodoo that has a doctrine of either poisoning through the feet, you might call it, or foot track magic. Foot track magic has some European parallels, which probably Dr. Fox may go into later, but if you grab someone's footprint, which gets a little harder these days with concrete, but you can still do it in the beach or in the frozen north where there's snow. And then if you can do things to it, and because that person left the footprint, it's still a part of him, you can take that, add herbs to it to try to control them or hurt them.
Or make them fall in love with you.
Or make them fall in love with you. Exactly. And a large part of hoodoo is related to dealing with the spirits. And you can deal with saints, you can deal with your family departed, or you might watch the obituaries and see when a bad person died and see where they're buried, and then you go to their grave and take some of their dirt. You buy some dirt from the graveyard and then use that for evil work. It's quite common in hoodoo. Unlike in European magic, places are haunted. Like you might have a haunted mansion, or you might say, oh, that car is haunted or something. But in hoodoo, the person's spiritual essence is considered to reside in the grave. So if you go to the graveyard and you contact the spirit, you speak with it, and make an offering to it, sometimes it's silver dime, sometimes it's whiskey, it might be something they enjoyed in life, like chocolates or whatever. You leave that at the grave and make a deal to take some of the dirt. And then you can take that dirt with you and basically deploy it through spells to have that spirit give you assistance in whatever your desires are.
So what kind of spells?
Well, I just jump in here real quick. You could use that for productive purposes, too. It's not always something negative, but you could say your grandmother's grave, who was someone who was very protective of you and helped you out in your life with a little with financial stuff. If you were having some financial difficulties, you could go there and talk to your grandmother and purchase some of the dirt to use in a spell to bring you some more wealth and prosperity in your life.
Or another case like that, if you have a family member who loved you, that would be very powerful for protective magic. If someone's coming to your house and causing you problems, you can deploy some of that dirt along with other herbs as a barrier, and your grandmother will help you, or whoever you're calling upon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just clarify too, there's different types of hoodoo practitioners. Some do some things, some don't. There's some that go under, I guess the old terminology was lady-hearted. They do works for love, and
they only do nice things.
Nice things. And there are other ones who will do things to help people. Sometimes people feel wronged, and I was reading a book on one of the last gypsy shamans, and I forget the name of the book right now, but he was saying, and in the gypsy tradition too, there's the old tradition of the gypsy curse, and he was trying to explain it as the curse was the way to say no. If someone was really bothering you, if someone was making your life miserable for no reason, you've got a neighbor who's sicking his dogs on your kids, something like that, and you couldn't get much relief from it, there's ways to make that person move or protect yourself from them. And
are you going to get into any of that tonight?
Well, we're going to talk about some easy stuff.
Okay.
A little bit later, unless I don't know if we're there yet.
Where do you want to go from here, Dr. Fox?
Well, what haven't we talked about? We talked about...
we haven't talked about doll babies.
Doll babies.
When you see voodoo dolls on TV, well, if they're showing a voodoo practitioner, voodoo practitioners can also practice hoodoo. Hoodoo is the magic, and voodoo is the spiritual end of things. But doll babies are a big staple in people's imagination, and it's always been called the doll baby. It's never been called the voodoo doll. That's product of Hollywood. And sometimes doll babies take on the aspect of Toby's. Toby's another name for mojo hand or hand, because they're stuffed, and you can stuff them with herbs to bring about different effects. If you can make a doll for healing a person, you can make a doll to hurt a person, you can make a doll to bring their love to you, you can make a doll to bind a person. And the most common material that dolls are made of, if you're making one by hand, is red flannel, which is actually the same material that you make traditionally the mojo hands out of. Red was a very powerful color in African religion, and anything red tends to have power in hoodoo beliefs. And then the most popular stuffing for the doll would be Spanish moss, regardless of its intended purpose. But conversely, commercially manufactured dolls can also be used.
I guess you could use a Barbie doll if you wanted to.
Sure, absolutely. And I remember when I was a boy sticking pins into a G.I. Joe that looked like one of my friends. Didn't work, though, not back then. And so as you make the doll, if you make one, you want to put intent into it. And you think of this person, what they mean to you, what you want done for them or to them, and you try to put as much emotional energy into it as you can. Once it's made, it needs to be basically baptized, brought into being. So in that case, what you would do is you would either go to, say, a Catholic church and get some holy water, or you might make your own holy water by mixing salt. You could start with blessed salt, which is kosher salt, or you bless it yourself, or both. Give it a double blessing, and then bless water, and mix the two together. Give them one more blessing, and then when I do a doll, I always do it in a Christian manner. In the name, I baptize you as so-and-so in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And having been raised a Protestant, I'd probably give my mother a heart attack. But
it's something that's common to European traditions too. They did use dolls, puppets.
Right, that's one of the crossovers.
One of the crossovers. The other thing I was going to say about the foot track magic, I hadn't seen much of that outside of the African traditions, except for I was looking through an old book called Radia Gospel of the Witches, which was something Charles Godfrey Leland found the last century, and from an old Italian a witch who in I forget where in Italy had dug up this. He used to publish folklore, things he found on the gypsies and different cultures. And this woman named Maddalena, he called her that, dug up this manuscript from a number of Italian sorcerers, witches, Strega. And they called it a Radia Gospel of Witches. Part of it is a religious tract. But there is a little mention in there that at one time, witches in Italy used something called witch money, which was like a sharpened coin to dig up the foot tracks of people to work on. So that's the only place I've seen it so far mentioned in another culture, but there could be others.
So they actually dig up the whole footprint?
I don't know if they need the whole footprint.
Well, my experience is the whole footprint comes up. And one of the preferred things in hoodoo, which is interesting, as you mentioned a coin, I hadn't heard that before, was to some people say to do it with a silver spoon, so you're dealing with precious metal probably in both cases. And it doesn't matter that the footprint remain intact. That the foot has touched the earth is all that's necessary. So if it crumbles away and you just have it in a Ziploc baggie or whatever, it's still fine for magical use.
This is part of that law of contagion again, that where the person stepped is a contact point with them. But in this African tradition-based magic, there's something about the feet where things can enter the soul or the being through the feet.
That poisoning through the feet again.
Right. But, and to remember this, sometimes this sounds kind of negative, that all hoodoo is about manipulating people in a certain negative way. But most of it is blessing for, money or love.
Positive results.
Yeah, positive results. Some of the other stuff comes in because the ethics of hoodoo are a little bit different. There's a lot of modern Wiccans and modern witchcraft, which has a different ethic. But hoodoo is kind of about getting results, and the practitioner decides what is, how they're responsible about that. It's up to them.
It can be amoral at times. And again, talking about the foot track magic, there's a lot of spiritual baths and floor scrubs in hoodoo, and this comes possibly through a Jewish connection when the Jews were in Egypt, which of course is a part of Africa, and because Jewish culture has a lot of spiritual bathing that goes on. But besides the spiritual bath, there's floor scrubs. There's a very popular thing is a 3-ingredient floor scrub, and it can be very simple. It can be like pine salt, and a little bit of ammonia. Pine is a very purifying. It'll chase away bad things. Salt is a blessing ingredient. And ammonia, because of this volatile odor that it has, similar to vinegar, which is used rather the same, and camphor with a very, very strong aromatic sense, that's known in hoodoo to chase away spiritual entities.
So, I'm sorry, Dr. Thunder.
Oh, that's okay.
I was just going to say there's a big focus in hoodoo on cleansing and keeping your house clean more than just physically. It's like keeping it pure, keeping the good spirits in and the bad stuff out.
Sure, but the floor scrubs, that's where your foot hits the floor. So I just wanted to bring up that point in regards to foot track magic.
Also the sweeping thing.
Right. There's a lot of sweeping. There's actually an old product called what's that called? The Chinese wash. Whose is that?
Chinese wash.
The name on that, Dr. Fox.
You mean who makes it or who?
Well, Chinese wash is enough because there's.
Yeah, it's just called Chinese wash. Okay.
And what you would do with that is you'd take pieces of broom, and you'd put them into the bottle of soap, and after you finished scrubbing your floor, you would sprinkle those out into the yard. And that would take the additional cleansing power, the banishing power of the broom, which the symbology there's pretty obvious. Broom sweeps out messes, and adds that to your front yard as well.
And there's things you can do to your house because the entryways, and I think this is a crossover with European magic too. Some of the real old stuff. Where they, I forget, there's an old witch record of, I don't know if it was Isabel Gaudy or somebody else who was sweeping the wealth of the town to her son's house by sweeping a broom and saying that as she went. But in hoodoo, you do things with sweeping out of your house to get rid of negativity or sweeping things in if you're trying to bring in wealth or something like that. But you can make a floor wash and then wash down your front doors with it and put things in there. Like if you want some wealth in your house, you could put ingredients in there to bring some wealth to your house and wash your front door with that. If you wanted love, you'd put some love ingredients in the.
So what would be some of the prosperity ingredients that you would put in this wash?
You could make a tea with calendula flowers because they look like gold coins. Cinnamon's very big for money. Let's see. I'm trying to think.
So things that like golden seal, would that work?
Well, golden seal's not exactly right for that, but that's kind of the idea in a lot of cases through the doctrine of signatures.
Cinnamon is a big one. I think I'm trying to think if five-finger grass would be good for that too.
Oh yeah, five-finger grass would be good. Five-finger grass is good for because you have the idea of the five fingers grasping and holding on to something. It's also good for protecting you against anything a hand with five fingers can do to you also.
But even as a simple one, if someone made a wash with a little bit of, you could put some, I think you could put some bayberry maybe too, or a little thyme, and put some cinnamon, make a tea and put that in your wash with a little, whatever your cleansing agent was in the bucket, and then you wash down your front door, and you'd say something, like I'm blessing this house with money, in whatever religious framework you're using.
Okay, I've got, you could use allspice for money, alfalfa, chamomile tea. And there's
actually, this kind of is leading us into Dr. Thunder. You think we should get into a few little practical things we want to do here?
I think we should.
We wanted to teach people a few little
simple little charms. Can't hurt, right?
That's right.
Okay, when you guys are getting into this, I just want to let you know that I'm picking up Dr. Thunder real well. Dr. Fox, I need you to speak up or into your receiver just a little bit better.
Okay. Is that good?
It's a little bit better, yes. Yes, indeed.
Okay, I'm just going through some of my notes here to try to find out what we talked about earlier. And
you were gonna talk about a blessing oil.
Right. Blessing oil can be made very easily. And this one's a Christian context. You get yourself some extra virgin olive oil. As a matter of fact, in a pinch, almost any oil can use, but for a blessing oil, because of the biblical context, both in Old and New Testament of olive oil, that's what we would prefer to use. And then
plant over animal?
Just because of the long history of holy oils being compounded in the Bible with olive oil.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then you get a little glass of that. Actually, no more than a shot glass would probably be fine because a little bit of oil goes a long way, right, Dr. Fox?
That's right.
And usually you buy it in about half-ounce bottles to begin with. So half a shot of olive oil in a little glass jar, and you can hold it in your left hand. And left is popular in Hoodoo through some Native American links. For instance, in Cherokee Native American magic, the left side was all related to magic. So you hold that in your left hand, and the way you would charge that would be basically just to talk to it from your heart. Say, I ask this oil to do nothing but good, blessed work for me. Or anything. You can say a prayer of any kind with it. And as you hold it in your hand and concentrate on it until you imagine the whole thing glowing or in flames. And then you set it to the side. You get your salt. And again, you can get kosher blessed salt if you like. Or you can bless your own easily by doing the same thing. And salt will do what you tell it to. So you have the salt in your hand and you imagine it glowing. You say, salt, I want you to bring blessings to all my magical operations. And then you combine the two, and you say, this now is my holy oil to be used for all things blessed in my life. And it's a free form. So you can say whatever comes to you at the moment. And, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat tonight.
You're sure it wasn't a toad?
At your house, it would be a toad, Dr. Fox. And we're going to use this oil a little bit later in a success sigil spell for training your money to get more money for you. But you can take this and you can touch the four corners of your doorway and the center of the door, like the 5 spots on a dice, and bless your doorway. You can say that only good people who only mean me well pass through this door. You can set down boundaries, and some people use this to sanctify their bedrooms by anointing the four corners of their bedstead. Things like that.
Do you do any blessings with soap? I've heard of a thing where you take a bar of soap and you do the pentagram on your door in the same manner, and just allow only good to come through the doorway. Is that hoodoo?
I think it's similar, but I don't.
I think that there's a lot of cross-cultural similarities on a lot of that, especially in regards to making protective barriers.
But
in your home,
pentagram would be more Wiccan or witchcraft, right?
Right. And if you want to make that oil extra strong, you could add a little bit of frankincense. That raises the spiritual quality of the oil too.
You could use that on your desk at work if you say you were having
problems with your boss.
Right. You could use that. Bless your desk in the same pattern, the four corners and once in the middle.
You could bless your car.
Hey, I have a mojo in my car just for travel.
That's good.
All kinds of.
I should have had one before my automobile accident.
Well, see, you should have talked to me.
You charge too much. That's one thing. Hoodoo practitioners generally are considered to be professionals in what they do, and they charge money. Some people in magical traditions say, "Oh no, we can't charge money for this," but in hoodoo, it's actually very much expected. I knew a woman who ran an occult store, and she would have African American women come in and say, "I need to have this done," and she'd go over and she'd say, "Oh, well, you need to do this kind of spell," and she starts picking things off the shelf and say, "You need this," and they say, "No, you don't understand. We want you to do it," because that's the culture. And people who know hoodoo say, they know that not everyone's gifted for the work. And these little spells, like making the blessing oil and watching the results and doing some other things, are a good way to see if maybe you have a blessing or a talent for the work.
Right. Mm-hmm. They say gifted for the work. If you're gifted, your things will work easier and faster.
But don't give up if the first thing doesn't work. Try a few things. And then what's next, Dr. Fox? The success sigil?
The success sigil.
Okay, we're going to train you we're going to teach you how to train your money to hunt up more money for you. And this can be for business you're in. It could be if you're going gambling, any endeavor where you might get more money out of the situation of spending money. This is a great little thing. And now if you have your pencil and paper, write down the word success, S-U-C-C-E-S-S. And then we're taking the word success and we're going to alter it. So I just want to point out that
you got to take out the vowels.
Right, you take out the vowels, and now you got the S-C-C-S-S. We're going to balance it off, and extra S to the beginning, so it's S-S-C-C-S-S. But now what we really want is the sigil, which we're changing those S's and C's to dollar signs and cent signs. So we have dollar sign, cent sign, dollar sign.
Okay.
You take that sigil, and you write that across the front of a dollar bill, or however much denomination of money you want to put that on. Then you find the Secretary of the Treasury's signature. You sign your name underneath that. Now you turn it over, and you put your initials in the four corners. And you turn it back over to the front. Now you take your blessing oil, and you anoint the 5-spot pattern on the dollar the way we told you earlier. And you say, "Money, you are trained to bring me more money," or "I need more money, I'm calling upon you to bring it to me." This again, speak from the heart, say that little spell, and while you're doing that, fold the dollar bill towards you in one direction. You're folding this luck towards you. Turn it 90 degrees, fold it again towards you. Now you can keep it in your wallet. You can put some sassafras in your wallet. Now, not everybody has sassafras in their cupboard, but a little bit of cinnamon will also do a good job of helping that money go. Now, what you do then is, if you need to buy a tool for work, you use that money to buy the tool, because that's going to bring you more work when you buy that tool and put more money in your pocket. If you go gambling, that's the money that you put into the slot machine or trade in for chips or whatever, and you send that out to get you up a winning. And if you spend all your train money, you don't spend any of your winnings because that hasn't been trained yet. That won't do you any good. You might lose it all. It's also a good strategy to keep a little money.
So this money is going out to hunt you up some more money and bring it back to you.
Absolutely.
And
so if you want people to give you money, you'd give it away?
Well, you get your money working for you. Like you put it in the bank and it earns interest, kind of like that.
But you wouldn't be doing this, with all your money. It's just...
Well, you could.
Yeah, you could if you wanted
to. You spend a lot of time at night scribbling on dollars.
And I suppose if you don't want to deface the money, you could use some kind of oil or something. I knew someone who used to bless every dollar that she spent. I blessed this for the use of everyone it touches, and it meets on the way, and may it bring me back blessings too. She did that all the time, and I think it's a way of thinking of money as just.
And she had nothing but good luck in her life, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing was too, if you ever see some money like this come to you that looks like it has something on it that's been blessed, you bless that person who sent it out, and then you
sign your name on that as well.
You continue it. It's like piggybacking on the back of that. So that should bring you some wealth.
And how about Lucky Race, Dr.
Right?
Fox?
I'm sorry, Mary?
And you guys do that, right?
Oh, yeah. And we went out to the Indian Casino once, a whole bunch of us, 6 of us. With our blessed money, we also did some other small ritual work beforehand. We all had our blessed money, and we went to play the slots, and within, I'd say 15 minutes, 5 of the 6 of us had doubled or tripled our money. But the problem was, we should have put some wisdom oil on there because we all thought it was so easy we'd continue to play, and we all lost after that.
Gotta know when
gotta know when to quit.
So, I was going to talk maybe about the honey jar spells.
Sure. Do you want to take that one, Dr. Fox?
Yeah, or unless you want that one.
Well, I just described a couple things here. I don't want to hog the whole show.
Okay, this should be a pretty easy one. This is basically to sweeten someone in your life. You can use it different ways. You think of honey or some kind of syrup, like Karo syrup. If you don't have honey, some kind of sweet syrup. You want it in a jar, probably not too large because you don't have to use a lot of this. And
I'd say you see those small jars of honey you can get in the store, those tiny ones. They're almost like a sample size. You know what I mean? They're about just a couple ounces in there. Those would probably be what I would use.
Yeah, something like that. And if you could get something, you don't want one of those plastic things, a squeeze bottle, because you may
no plastic beer?
No. You may burn a candle on top of this too, and then if you do that, I don't know how the candle's going to fit on the bear's head. So, but what you do is say that it's someone that you've been dating, and you feel maybe it needs a little push. It's been a little standoffish, and you feel good, going out with this person. You write your name, or actually, you first start writing their name, because you always put your name on top. You write their name 3 times, right on top of each other, above each other, rather, so you can read it 3 times. And then you turn that piece of paper, and it can be
90 degrees.
90 degrees, so that it makes like a cross almost, and you write your name over it 3 times, over the other person's name.
So it's like 3 separate lines of text.
So it looks like it almost looks like a tic-tac-toe board with these lines of the names. And what you do is you can fold up that piece of paper and say something like, return my love as I, give you love, or something like that. And you put it down into the honey or the sweet syrup, and you tighten that jar down. And this is something you could, every day you could hold it and say, I'm giving you my love, return my love. If you wanted to do this, you could do it for a condition even in your house where maybe you were having some problems with your maid and things weren't very sweet. Well, this is a way to sweeten it up so that you get back to that spot where you both fell in love.
I'd like to add something there. That it's very important that you write the person's name first, and then you write your name over theirs, because that gives you domination over that person and control. So you're over them.
So, well, you're in control of the situation.
Right.
Now, then what you can do is, to continue that, you can burn a colored candle, a white candle if it's just general or for, pure love.
You use that blessing oil on there, too. You can scratch your name on with a pin and hit it with blessing oil.
Right. So what you do is you burn this candle attached to the top of, you fix it right on the top of the jar. And you can burn it down and while you're doing this every day, burn it a little bit. Say, love is coming to us, love is blessing our union, whatever. And the honey is sweetening up the situation, and this works.
And I've heard many, many people testify to this one. As simple as it sounds, it's very powerful. And a place where it works really good is if you've got a bad situation with someone, not just like a sweetheart or something, but if you got like a boss who's coming down on you hard, you can make them your friend with this. It works.
Just don't leave the candles burning when you're not there.
Well, you can do that. You just got to be careful about it. You know what I do, Dr. Fox?
What's that, Dr.
I put them in my shower. They can't burn anything in my shower.
Okay.
Some people put them in their kitchen sinks, too. And as a matter of fact, I was at an auto parts store, and I found a very shallow oil pan, which would be great on the top of a tabletop for about $6. And I'm going to do that one of these days.
Your hoodoo pan.
Right, for candle burning.
Very good. Well, guys, we have about, I'd say about 5 to 10 more minutes to give you, and then we're going to call it a wrap.
Okay. Well, I think we should...
you want to talk about that Lucky Rice spell, Dr. Thunder?
Sure. Here's a really quick one. They sell Lucky Rice in a lot of occult shops, and it's just rice that's dyed green. They charge you a lot of money for it, and that ain't the way Lucky Rice is made. You take a handful of dried rice, and you hold it in your left hand. You say, "Everywhere I walk, you draw on the luck." And then you take that and you put it in your shoes, and you walk in it for 3 days. And then at the end of the 3 days, you cast it onto your kitchen floor, then you sweep it up and sweep it out into your front yard, and that'll bring all that luck that you walked over into your house. But
make sure you wear some socks and don't get the rice between your toes.
And there's a couple of books maybe people be interested in these last few minutes.
By all means.
To read a little more on it, I've got just a couple here. There's one called Mules and Men by Zora Neale Hurston. In the 1920s, she was an African-American anthropologist who went amongst people and studied hoodoo beliefs. The first half of the book is African folklore. The second half is very fascinating with all her hoodoo experiences. And then there's the Jim Haskins book, which is that Hoodoo and Voodoo, Mike?
I think it's Voodoo and Hoodoo. Yes.
Yeah, and it's a good example of 1970s urban contemporary hoodoo practices. And a good place to go shopping for things is LuckyMojo.com, and they have a massive website where you can learn more hoodoo than you can shake a stick at.
Or rub a root at.
Rub a root at.
We didn't
or
even
burn
talk,
a candle on.
Yeah, we didn't really talk much about John the Conqueror. Hi, John. But
you keep John the Conqueror is one of the most powerful roots there is. It's a lot of men carry it. It's got male power and mastery abilities for you. You have that oiled in your pocket. If you see your adversary coming, you put it in your pocket and you rub that root. And
you can also put money oil on it or love oil to
almost
attract money
anything.
or love. Right. It's just a very powerful root.
People have Buckeyes in their pocket, too. They'll oil those up. Those are good for money. Put a little money oil on a Buckeye root. Or some of that blessing oil. Say, bless me with money. And put that in your pocket.
So a rabbit's feet, is that hoodoo?
The what?
The rabbit's foot?
Yes, absolutely. That's one thing that I've seen old references to it, very racist remarks about it as being an African-American charm. The thing that most people don't know is that you have to anoint it with oil, and the best oil is generally something called Van Van, which has a very citrusy smell to it. It's very wonderful. If you work around stables and you've smelled fly spray, it's that same kind of thing. It's a citronella kind of essence to it.
It's funny, my dad always used to carry rabbit's feet when we were a kid. Actually, one year we had a Christmas tree that was totally decorated with rabbit's feet. So I didn't know it. I guess my dad was into hoodoo.
But the secret to the rabbit's foot is you got to dress it with the oils to make it work best.
Very good. So is there a couple other titles that you want to share with us this evening?
Those two are really probably the best for a general audience, I'd say. Mm-hmm. There's more that get more magically technical. And let me see.
I think if somebody went to LuckyMojo.com, there's all kinds of references to
They sell many
material.
books there.
Mm-hmm.
You could certainly find a lot of very good books there. There's that book, Spiritual Merchants, Religion, Magic, and Commerce by Carolyn Morrow Long. I don't think that's very easy to find anymore. It's kind of about the evolution of spiritual merchants in this country.
It does have a lot about hoodoo in there and how it developed. It's a very good book,
mm-hmm.
but it may be out of print.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of others that I have on top of my head that you can actually pick up today anymore. There's a lot of bad books out there I could certainly mention, but
there's some books that contain hoodoo blended with other things. Like there's a huge doorstop of a book. I think it's called Element Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. It has hoodoo blended with European magic and witchcraft and all kinds of stuff.
The only problem with that book is the author does not cite the sources of or the cultures of the individual spells. And the trained eye can pull it out. But it's still a very interesting book and has some interesting recipes for oils in there, too.
Very good. And as you're closing, what would you like to share?
Well,
share one more thing for your closing.
Well, we just have a little statement. Right, Dr. Thunder?
Yes, Dr. Fox.
We're going to say this is Dr. Fox.
And this is Dr. Thunder.
Saying,
rub your roots.
Yeah, don't forget to rub your roots.